Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to your afternoon session at DevLearn. This session is called 21st Century Learning and Development, Driving Business Results Through Performance Consulting Skills, and it's hosted by Dashe and Thomson. We're so happy that you're here today. This is one of our favorite conferences of the year for sure. We are thrilled to be participating in DevLearn 2020 virtually this year. This is a favorite conference for us to participate in person, but here we are virtually together, and we are happy to see you today. So thank you for joining us. We at Dashe are a team of learning enthusiasts. We provide learning and development consulting, and we love being a natural extension of your learning and development team. Our firm is based in Minneapolis. We have been in business for almost 40 years. This will be our 40th anniversary coming up this winter. I'm Anne-Marie Fender. I am the Business Development Director at Dashe. Today you're going to be hearing from Jolene Rowan. She is our Chief Learning Officer and Executive Vice President of Client Services. Feel free to message any questions as we go along today. We'll reserve a little bit of time at the end. And thank you so much for being here. So with that, Jolene, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thanks for joining everybody.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Anne-Marie. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Honestly, it's very nice to be in community with you. It's been a long haul here, stuck at home in our home offices, and it's truly a pleasure to be interacting with colleagues at DevLearn. As Anne-Marie said, I'm Jolene Rowan, and I'm Chief Learning Officer at Dashe and Thomson. In my 25 years in learning and development, I feel there has never been a more exciting time for us in learning and development. Leaders understand more than ever before that their people give them the most competitive advantage. And today we're going to discuss our role in enabling that advantage. We've always been advocates for the people, and now we get to supercharge that advocacy. So today we're going to talk about being performance consultants and performance consulting skills. And I truly believe that these skills are the secret sauce for talent and workforce development that really drives business results. We're going to start by talking about the what and why. What does this mean for us as learning and development professionals, and why now? Then we're going to dig into some how-to talk about what are the skills and processes and mindsets that we need that will enable us to be performance consultants, gathering data, using empathy tools, analyzing that data, synthesizing insights, ideating and scoping solutions. So we're going to start with the what and why. And I have to say that over the years, I've often felt that I was operating as an order taker, as managers and SMEs would come to me and tell me what training they needed. And of course, I often delivered. But that approach is not going to work anymore amid these ever increasing rates of change. Our organizations need us to be on the ready, to predict and act as strategic business partners, behavior change architects, and drivers of business results through people. We have an opportunity to have a seat at the strategic table, and our organizations need us to do that. We build on all of the competence we've gained over the years as learning and development professionals. But this is going to take a shift in mindset to see ourselves as performance consultants who take a results-focused, solution-neutral approach. And that's key. Okay? Results focused, solution neutral. So as our leaders and subject matter experts are coming to us, we don't talk about solution first. Okay? We start by asking questions and then continuously identifying mission critical skills, assessing gaps, and creating meaningful solutions. So why? Why now? Well, I've been hearing, as you probably have been, about a reskilling emergency. Okay? The World Economic Forum, in their Davos conference in January of 2020, announced that by 2022, 42% of core skills that are required to perform existing jobs are expected to change. And why is that? It's because of automation. Automation, and I think of automation as AI and machine learning, is going to free up our time and attention and those of our learners for higher order thinking and creative work. So contrary to what we might feel, that all of our jobs are going to become irrelevant, that's not true. And we need to be prepared for these higher order thinking and creative tasks. And the World Economic Forum has given us some hints. You know, it's going to be high-tech skills, but we have to avoid the misconception that that's all we need is high-tech skills. As we move through the next several years, interaction skills are going to be equally important, especially in the areas of creativity, collaboration, and interpersonal skills. In fact, right now, concurrent with DevLearn, the World Economic Forum is hosting a Jobs Reset Summit. And Thursday's sessions are all focused on education, skills, and lifelong learning. If you have a chance on Thursday, I would encourage you to hop over and check out what they're saying too about skills and the future of work. Additionally, our learners are telling us their wants and needs through research that McKinsey and Burson by Deloitte are performing. One area is lifelong learning, upskilling and reskilling, intentional, always-on learning, and that requiring growth and curiosity. Some psychological safety for unlearning, failing fast, and relearning, learning in the flow of work, and data-driven personalized learning. Okay. These are skills and environments and competencies that our learners need. And it's up to us to help connect the dots. I'd like to focus on this one point.
her name on, I could text her. Tell her your battery died. Buy you a couple minutes.
Lost Jolene altogether.
Anne Marie, it's Mark.
Hello, this is Jolene.
Hey, Jolene, it's Mark.
Hi.
We lost your video. I want to,
Yes, I don't know what happened.
I'm not sure either. So I'm going to make you the host.
Okay, thank
You should be
you.
able to turn your video back on. And let me see if I can do, actually, you know what? Anne Marie would need to do that at this point. Anne Marie, can you right click and
Let me try to do that. Yes.
thank you.
My apologies, everyone. I really do not know what happened.
We'll get you fixed in a moment.
I am trying, although, you know what, I am. I'm sorry, I'm actually having trouble even seeing Jolene's name in there, Mark, so
I'm seeing her
I'm
slide.
not quite sure.
So I think Anne Marie, or excuse me, I think Jolene, I think your slide deck's appearing again.
Is it?
It looks like it is.
Yep.
You might want to just put it on presentation mode.
Lovely. Wow. Life in the digital remote age.
We're back in business.
Yes, and thank you all for your patience. So what that brings us back to, the what and why, the reskilling emergency, the need to bring to our learners what they want and need is a new approach. Okay? The old approach that we've been taken and our business leaders and SMEs have been expecting of us, that of, in a lot of cases, being an order taker has to change. And in fact, we deserve a seat at the strategic decision-making table, and our leaders want us there. And the next step, the next questions are, how do we set ourselves up to be the performance solution consultants that our organizations need us to be? How do we take a results-focused, solution-neutral approach? And how do we continuously identify mission-critical skills, assess gaps, and create meaningful solutions? Well, to that end, I'd like to share a very quick story. I was working with a client in the past year, and the client was responsible for all of operations learning within their organization. And his leadership team brought to him a challenge. There was a shortage of welders, and this organization was having a difficult time attracting and retaining welders. So in addition to the shortage, that was coupled by internal issues. This client knew that there was a learning or a training issue, and came to me and had done a lot of work, a lot of homework around what he thought needed to be done. And he came to me with an outline of 73 topics, very thorough, knowing that he needed a digital environment, so e-learning, 5 to 10 minutes each, which was about 12 hours of learning. So without asking any additional questions, by being an order taker, I might have done that. I might have said, yeah, let's do it. And in fact, my CFO probably would have loved me for it, because it would have been about 3,400 hours of design and development work for us at a cost of around, or a price tag of around $400,000. But I knew that there was something not right with this, and knew that I need to start by asking questions. And so that's where performance consulting comes in, asking questions first. And where we landed after going through the process, convincing him of this mindset, where we landed was a variety of 20 activity-based deliverables, a variety of modes, a 40% cost savings, for a scope of work around 165 versus 400,000, and a solution that brought learning in the flow of work, focused on operational mission critical work tied to KPIs. So how did I do this? How do we do this? Well, you build on what we already know. And learning and development as performance consultants makes a ton of sense. We really are the keepers of performance in our organization because we sit at the hub of so much information. We understand operational procedures. We understand HR procedures. We're connected with IT, marketing, legal, and the learners. What we need is to continue to hone our performance consulting competence. And we do that through mindset, skills, and process, each of which we're going to talk about today. So mindset, at a high level, don't jump to solutions. And winky face, not all problems are solved by training. We all know this, right? But how do we convince our leadership and our subject matter experts to think outside the box? Well, we start by asking questions. And to do that, just like we need to do for our learners, we need to cultivate a mindset of growth and curiosity in ourselves. And once we do this, we begin to release ourselves from this expectation of being perfect. And we can start to see our failures and mistakes as part of the process. And we can overcome our fear of asking questions or of trying new things by cultivating a curiosity mindset. And it's this mindset that helps propel us further into a performance consulting approach. Secondly, skills. Just like we need to skill our learners, we need to skill ourselves. And as I've been kind of scanning the industries, I've come to believe that there are a few key skills that we as performance consultants need to hone. Design thinking. Take a design thinking course and really focus, and we're going to talk a lot about empathy and ideation in the next few minutes. Business acumen, do what it takes to get a deep knowledge of the business across the functions within your organization so that you can have a business results focus. Data literacy, we need to collect data, collect the right data, make meaningful, get meaningful insights out of that data, be able to visualize it, and in doing so, we need to really hone our skills in pattern recognition. And we need to beef up some marketing skills within our competence, particularly around content strategy, curation, and management, and storytelling. Content strategy and curation is going to become even more important as content becomes even more available and even more ubiquitous, and our ability to sort through that and filter it down to the right content for our learners is going to be essential. And finally, we need a process. And this is the process that I follow. And this is really before a project even begins, let's say, before a learning and development project, even before we start writing a storyboard. And this is how you take a results-focused, solution-neutral approach. You establish empathy by gathering data. You analyze and synthesize that data, and then you ideate and recommend the right solutions. And there's a variety of solutions that are available to us now, both off the shelf and custom built by ourselves in-house or partnering with a vendor like us. But the key here is to start by establishing empathy with your learners, and that's going to take a curious mindset, a lot of questioning and listening. Now, this seems like a really robust process, and it is. But I can tell you that once you have this mindset and once you have the skills, this is something that you can do in a brief conversation with a subject matter expert. For a more complicated, let's say a complete overhaul of maybe a new hire program, you might take several days to several weeks to do this. But in any event, it has to happen before you start building the solution. So next, we're going to talk about each of these steps, starting with gathering data using empathy tools. Okay. And what's key here is we take a holistic approach, a whole person approach to gathering data. We want to understand beliefs and motivations. What do our learners already know? Do they understand what needs to happen in the context of what they do? And then we focus on their ability or their skill to make it happen. And to do that as part of this scoping and initial design phase, we want to involve our key stakeholders and our audience early, if possible, through interviews, observation, focus groups, surveys. And if we are not able to get to the audience, then we need to have the learning requester, the leader, the subject matter expert, answer some questions about who the audience is. And there are 3 tools that we use to get deeper meaning and establish empathy: project premortems, day in the life mapping, and empathy mapping. So project premortem. This is an interesting step that we have started taking with really in every situation in which we're scoping a project. And there was some research done by psychologists, and they found that prospective hindsight, meaning imagining that an event has already occurred, increases the ability to accurately predict future outcomes by 30%. So by doing project premortems, we increase our chances of success. And the way that we do that is to ask our stakeholders, ask them to imagine that the project is over and is a huge success. Okay? So we give them a minute to think about that. And then we ask, what does success look like? What are we trying to fix? We use our 5 whys questioning technique to dig deeper. What does success look like? Why? What are we trying to fix? And why? And why that? So this is how we get to a deeper understanding of what success looks like and to set ourselves on pace for success. The second tool in our toolkit, and probably one of the most important that a performance consultant can have, is the ability to do day in the life mapping. And day in the life mapping is really thinking about a role that you're designing for and thinking about what a day in the life looks like, walking a day in the shoes of that learner or that role as they go about their day holistically, because we want to create a vast new hire program, or what their day looks like as they move through a particular process. Okay, and we want to start with a bird's eye view. And you can do that by interviews or even quick focus groups. You could even ask your subject matter expert, tell me what a day looks like. How do people interface with this system, this process, whatever it might be? And outline that. And then dig deeper by observation or additional focus groups. And the key here is that we want to uncover key performance indicators and thoughts and feelings and beliefs and barriers, and even capture quotes or defining words. So we're really digging deep to understand who our learner is so that we can dig really deep and design solutions that go beyond the surface. Okay. So back to the example of the welders and the client needing to create a new hire program that engages and attracts and retains welders. This is what the day in the life map looked like. And we started with a rough outline from the moment someone enters the building or parking lot to sleeping well, right? And again, we took a holistic view because this is a new hire program. And then we started to section it up. Well, this is the start of the day stuff. This center section, that's just looped through as they do different jobs, and then the end of the day. So we started to paint a picture of what this looks like. And what this allowed us to do is describe it to a new hire in a logical way, a relevant way that made sense to them. Very, very important tool for a performance consultant who sits at the hub of all things performance for our learners. And we'll see in a little bit how this translates into a curriculum that moved from 73 modules to 20 activity-based lessons. Okay, an example of an empathy map. In about an hour's time, I was able to understand a lot about the learners just by asking a few people questions about the day in the life. And I understood better their work schedules and environment. Okay? Lifting heavy objects, working indoors confined, they have to wear lots of PPE. They're exposed to hazards, risks of burns, so there's fear. And they're asked in the quotes there, our well jobs run the gamut from basic to very complex. So we're really starting to understand who our learners are again. And later we'll synthesize this data into personas that we can use time and time again as we are creating, designing solutions. All right, so that is the first step, gathering data using empathy tools. And the key here is to truly establish empathy with our learners by walking a day in their shoes and being able to describe what that's like. That sets us up to analyze data and synthesize it into frameworks that then springboard us into ideation and solutioning. All right, so gap and root cause analysis. This is where we sort our data, all of that data that we've collected, and break it into component parts so that we start to see its organizational structure. And we can begin to identify the parts and see how they work together. And this is where we have to go back to our whole person approach and our understanding that not all problems are solved by training, right? There might be belief or motivation issues that come out. It could be fear that is getting in the way of motivation. We have to know that, because while training might not solve for that entirely, it's a blocker. It's going to get in the way. And the most elaborate or amazing learning program will and probably will fall flat if we can't engage hearts and minds. So knowledge, is there a knowledge or understanding issue? Is it a skill or practice issue? And quite frankly, those are the only types of issues that are well served by formal learning. Is it a process tool environment issue? When we go back, if we think back to our example, there were issues culturally where the new welders felt like they weren't respected by leadership and didn't have access to leadership and didn't have direction. So we make note of that. We may not be able to fix it, but we might be able to. When we get to ideation, we'll think about, is there a way in which we can deal with that? So gap and root cause analysis, essential. Breaking the data apart, seeing where there's an organizational structure and how these things work together, what is truly a training problem and what might require different types of interventions. Then we move into synthesis. And synthesis is where we bring all that data back together to tell a story or to form a new whole. And one of those ways, or one of those tools that we have for telling that story, is defining the problem statement or the problem statement definition, where we describe from our insights and our day in the life, what is the true problem? What's the real goal? How are we going to make this measurable? What actions do the welders need to take? What actions do managers and leaders need to take? And what are the gaps? What are the real gaps that we're starting to see in content from what is currently in the new hire program? So this is a beautiful way to synthesize the definition of the problem. Not only does it help us as learning and development professionals doing performance consulting, but it helps us create some rationale for why we do what we do when we're presenting to leaders. The second essential tool in this synthesis space are our learner personas. And I have 3 examples here. Again, this brings all the data together in a whole to tell a story about who the learners are. And when you have your data, you're going to start to see some differentiators among the audience. And you'll want to note those key differentiators because those will indicate potentially different learner personas within your audience. For the welder group, we came up with 3. And the differences had a lot to do with their motivations, which frankly had a lot to do with their generation and their experience. And we start to see that, we start to tell that story through these learner personas. Again, an awesome tool for us as not only as we develop this new hire program, but as we think about as changes are coming in this rapidly changing environment, we look back here to see what we might need to do to prepare these learners for those changes. Mark Millennial, we have George Gen Z. Interesting. Gen Zs want to be entrepreneurs. They want to be creative. They want to have room to try and fail again. They're very interested in security and financial success. They're motivated by achievement. That informs the solutions that we put together. In addition to George Gen Z, we also created Ginny Gen Z because in our data gathering, we found that there are very few women in welding jobs. And we found a couple of stories of women welders in this Gen Z space and realized and kind of dug deep to figure out what it is they love about this job so that this client could potentially attract more Ginny Gen Zs and then know how to nurture her once in the organization. All right, so 2 very important tools for synthesis. The problem statement and the learner personas. And of course, as we're analyzing and synthesizing, we can't forget about our workforce trends. Here is what the gurus, here is what research is telling us as we reach out to learners, what they want and need. This needs to inform our solutions, as well as our tried and true understanding of adult learners, making content relevant, activity-based, easy to consume, self-directed, social and collaborative, and sticky. We always have to remember learning isn't one and done. Not only does it need to travel into the flow of work, we need spaced repetition and practice. Okay. So we build on what we already know as instructional designers, as learning and development professionals, as learning experience designers, to empathize, gather and synthesize data, not only for us as we move on to ideating and scoping solutions, but to tell the story, the broader story, to our leadership teams and our organizations. So we move into ideate and recommend solutions. So here is where we take all of this work that we've done and we start to springboard into ideation. And there's really two things that I want to talk about here that move us from analysis and synthesis to ideation. One is to glean from that data some design guidelines, meaning some actual design, some guidelines that are independent of a solution. They're important or useful regardless of what we design. So if we think back to our example again of the welders, we know that regardless of what we do, we have to emphasize safety. We have to focus on task. We have to recognize prior experience. We have to engage management, etc. Those are guidelines that are critical regardless of the solution. And those will be guiding principles that we use to formulate our ideation. Then the next step is how might we? We ask how might we questions. And I like doing both of these activities in focus groups with the stakeholders, with a representative group of our learner audience. We are starting to see through, again, design thinking principles that involving learners, involving our audience at this phase is another critical path to success. So for how might we questions, in this situation, again, of our welders, how do we practice a variety of welds from simple to more complex? How do we incorporate opportunities for innovation and creativity? For an example, one thing that came up with this group is let's set up a sandbox weld station where new hires can go try something new. We also found that new hires are asked to facilitate tier meetings, which are daily team meetings. And there was a lot of hesitation and lack of confidence around that. So how do we increase confidence in facilitating those tier meetings? Now, that was not one of the 73 topics that the client mentioned when he came to me. It was only through the day in the life mapping that we realized, oh, we ask new hires to do this, but we never teach them how to do it. So yes, back to our day in the life. And an example of where ideation took us for this particular example. And as I talked about, that we came up with a variety of 20 activity-based deliverables that the learner consumes over 5 days. And a lot of it is learning in the flow of work And it's most definitely focused on operation mission critical work because of our day in the life mapping. And you can see the variety of modes here. We have video, e-learning, PDFs, job aids, and wall charts. We even scheduled in supervisor one-on-ones to ensure that new hires start to feel connected to their leadership team, but also to operationalize that one-on-one process within the leadership team. In this way, the new hire, the learner expects it and therefore is somewhat organically driving that process within the organization. Okay, so I'd like to talk just real quickly about a couple other examples, and then we have just a few minutes before we need to end. This is an example of working with a client who needed to form these teams of a variety of different professionals, from health professionals to prosecution. And these folks needed to work together, sometimes come around the table together. But there were some very significant issues in the way in which these folks worked together and would protect their own territory. And so as a job aid, we created these cards. It was a deck of cards that brought some levity to this, but recognized each individual archetype, health professional versus a prosecution professional, who they are, what their motivation is, what their superpower is, even what their quirks are, so that these can be used when you're forming new teams or when you're meeting together as a way to help understand each of these roles, what they bring to the table, and how to work effectively together. Another example of digging deep and understanding what gets in the way of learning and figuring out how to move learning into the flow of work is building this little app. So as learning and development professionals, working as performance consultants, we realized that the faculty needed a way to send case studies out to their learners that replicated the way an image viewer actually works. So we created this image viewer in a web app that allows faculty to upload images, notate them, create a voiceover, and send those out as ongoing case studies and practice activities. Thinking beyond, outside the box again, another case study template for peer learning. This is a project that we're working on with the World Bank, and they're working with countries, third world countries really, to establish investment cases to advance healthcare reform. Some countries have gone through the process and have had huge success. And so we've created this template for those countries to use to create and describe their case study. And we have two formats that we then turn around and deploy those to other countries in the process. One is in a descriptive PDF type case study, and another is an ebook version that really brings this case to life and enables this peer-to-peer learning. Okay, so we have gone through a lot of content talking about what is performance consulting, why do we need to do it now, how do we do some of these things in our upfront scoping, and so that we can take a performance consulting approach and do what our organizations need us to do in terms of being strategic partners, behavior change architects, and drivers of business results through people. And as we discussed, the key is really taking a results-focused, solution-neutral approach and continuously identifying mission-critical skills, assessing gaps, and creating meaningful solutions. I'd like to end by offering some resources for inspiration around some of the skills that we need to hone, particularly in design thinking, business acumen, data literacy, and marketing. I want to point out the World Economic Forum links there under business acumen, and the McKinsey report about one of the most fundamental skills required now, and that is being intentional learners and helping ourselves and our learners hone that skill. And these slides we will make available to you after this session. And I'm going to turn it back to Anne Marie to talk about how we can continue our discussion.
Thanks, everybody. I think I was doubly muted there. I'm going to skip the video because I think we have to go through a couple steps to get back to video there. But thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And as Jolene mentioned earlier, we are hosting an expo hour tomorrow. Our creative director, Eric Burgett, will be presenting at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. It's expo number 314, and we would love to have you join us then. We'll be talking about tales from the front lines of micro-learning design, and he has some awesome examples, and we'll be talking about some of the tools he uses. We would love to see you, and please join us. Thanks for your time.